Okay, so the session is recorded for those who would want to benefit. I will upload it on my YouTube channel. A quick survey out there for everybody. We do have all 100 people in attendance. So if you want to quickly take a survey, I want to get a sense of how many people attended the last session, how many did not. Okay, so 89 and 11. So we're pretty much at that level. So I'm going to launch the poll. I'm going to end the polling. So we're going to go right into the session. Okay, so I just ended the poll for a second. So 86 or so did not get a chance to attend last time. And then 14% of you are coming back to attend it. So that is great. Thank you. Okay, so a couple of housekeeping items, as I mentioned. Let me again just put my screen around. Yeah, so first of all, I apologize. Somebody asked me, we did the last session. I did injure my thumb and still in the process of recovering. So I apologize if it didn't take the time to get back and do another session. We will keep this very structured. The first one was all about free flow, open to question answer. We were drawing stuff out, but this was very, very structured. I do want to address the agenda that's in place. We will at least start a good 1 hour presentation. I will go slow. I will not rush things with the assumption that everybody wants to learn at the same pace. We will then open up lines or chat for Q&A end of the session. So if you want to hold your sessions or questions till then, that's great. If not, you can put it on the chat and we'll get to it. No audio for me. Everybody, I'm assuming everybody else is hearing me fine. Is that correct? I'm not on mute. Let me check my video. Can you show of thumbs, please, quickly. Can you guys hear me? Yes. Okay. So my audio is fine. If you're having issues with your audio, it's probably on your end, unfortunately. Okay. So they are able to hear me. Thank you. All right. A lot of thumbs. Okay. So we'll save the Q&A till the end. Please make sure you're on mute, even though I did set up that option. If you speak, if you ask questions, ask your questions and then go on mute again, okay? Based on our poll, we just did that. And then let's get to the next slide. Okay, so very quickly, this is not about marketing or promotional, no selfish promotions here, but if you don't know who I am, my name is Imtiaz Fazal, and I have 20 plus years of experience in this particular domain around the project management, portfolio, program, now a lot of Agile. So I come from that strong background. I used to work for a company called Northrop Grumman, a pretty big company actually for the federal and this government level projects, and helped with the program on the 911 system for the city of New York, NYPD and FDNY. Currently, I work for a company in the insurance space. I am their Agile enterprise Agile coach. So therefore, a lot of my responsibility is to help the organization do Agile transformation. I'm a corporate vice president in the program management office or the project management office. And that's one of the slides we'll talk about, okay? So if you want to get in touch with me, I love to connect. I'm trying to help people out. Really, that's the incentive. So I'm on LinkedIn. I sometimes people post jobs. I try to share them. I try to tag them. People tag me. So feel free to send me a LinkedIn invite. LinkedIn is very powerful, as you can all imagine, for jobs and networking. That is my LinkedIn. My picture might be hidden, but now you know how I look. I am good with my WhatsApp as well, sometimes overwhelmed, but I do my best to respond back. I avoid taking calls in the first question. I do prefer getting text messages first, getting a sense of what the question is about, where am I supposed to help you out or guide, and then some people can vouch for it, and then I get on the call with them just to kind of make sure they're clear about the questions and the responses that I'm providing. So you probably joined from the Be Agile group. It is a closed group in my WhatsApp community. So if you're part of that, great. If you're not, again, text me and I'll add you to the invite. Okay. I am somewhat certified in this space, right? Some certifications I have are on my right. Again, this is not about certification, what I've done, but there are a lot of frameworks and bodies that certify you. I happen to be an enterprise level coach. I have those certifications. I have obviously the Scrum Masters, the product owners, DevOps, portfolio, transformation, agile transformation, leading transformation, Kanban, business agility. I mean, there's a whole series of certification, but those are just a few that I put up. Um, I do classes, but those again are certification classes. They're training options. So separate discussion on that. Bottom are some of the sessions that I used to do on site training, more particularly. Uh, those are the pictures. I should probably start putting a lot of virtual classes that we run. So maybe next time I can put those pictures on. Okay. All right. So purpose. Why do I do this? Right. So there's a concept about extrinsic motivation and intrinsic. So extrinsic is usually the outer, right? People sometimes do stuff to be rewarded or awarded financially or just by getting recognize and all that stuff is all external motivation. Intrinsic motivation, and the picture which I found was very appropriate, at least how I feel about what I do. I'm not looking for an award or reward from anybody, honestly. Doing this, taking time off, and helping and guiding just makes me internally satisfied. It gives me a lot of happiness. Helping with people with interviews and when they come back, and then if they take classes, that the fact that they save money and then learn a lot, fortunately, and then also be able to donate, whether financially or educational wise, to other people. And that's really the motivation factor, right? The fact that somebody can learn, if you have the expertise and you're not sharing it, versus somebody who understands and has the knowledge and is willing to share it. So it's really about giving back, to be honest, and that's the intrinsic motivation that I have. There's a beautiful book by Danielle Pink on this called Drive, Drive. If you're in the Agile community, you've heard of it. So a good book to read through it if you ever want to get your hands on it. Okay, so that's really the purpose of doing this. So what is Agile? Right, it's a very common question. Some of us may have heard of it. Some of us probably can define it. Many of us probably are not sure about it. So this is the foundational stone of understanding what Agile is. And as I've committed and I promised myself that I will continue to do this, provide the knowledge through different series. Now, generally webinars are 45 minutes, so I don't consider this a webinar. I do consider this more for educational class sessions. So inshallah, I plan to do this series of sessions as a give back and knowledge sharing to the people. Okay. So, I don't overcommit. I'll do my best as I can. So first question is, what is a PMO? Now I just have slides, one really on each one of them, just to get people acquainted to what these terminologies is. If you attended the last session, a lot of questions were like foundational project management. Where is the project manager? Where does that person fit in? So we were like off tangent. So I wanted to put this structure together. So PMO generally is I'm just checking if everybody can still hear me. So I want to make sure there's no static noise because we do have a lot of people. So sometimes based on bandwidth, we could have some issues. So PMO generally is a project management office, also called program management office, right? So as you can imagine, it's really a group or a department or within an organization that's considered as a PMO. Uh, it could be a big organization or a department, could be a small organization. Some companies are very formalized the PMO structure. Some are still informal. The bottom line is, no matter what company you go with or go to or work for, they have some level of quote unquote this PMO department. And the project management department is really a department that helps organize a lot of work around projects, right? They help in defining and maintaining the standards of project management, right? So you don't want to be, again, have everybody go in different directions, right? How do you actually work together? How do you define standards, policies around how projects are done, how are they measured, how are they completed, who works with those projects, resources in that, what's the process to be followed, do we need to train people? So generally, those kind of standard practices are the ones that are handled by the PMO structure of the organizations. Okay? Program Management Office or Project Management Office really manages two levels of delivery. And I'm going to try to keep it a little simple. So the traditional way to manage projects is called the waterfall project, right? Therefore, I called it out project management, which is the traditional waterfall. And if you imagine a waterfall, the waterfall flows in one direction, right? So there's no way to kind of go the other direction. So that process, that particular way of managing process or projects in the traditional world is called the waterfall approach because there's not a lot of opportunities to go back. And then agile is the other way that projects or work actually and products and all that good stuff is managed. And we'll talk about the details around that. Okay. So the next slide is project management. So what is project management? Now that we know what a PMO is and you understand that's an organization or department within a company that helps put these standards in place and then sets up processes and training, project management is one area of the PMO, and that's generally how you manage projects, right? So very simply put, is how you project manage is about managing projects. I'm just going to make sure I see people. Yeah. So it's a practice of initializing, planning, executing, and closing of work, which is the project phases. So any project that is worked on has these set of phases, right? You start with a project or you initialize a project, which is understanding what the project is about, what is that we need, what individuals are needed, what is the cost around it, what's the scope around it. You plan the work, which is the planning phase of that project. Then the teams are working on the project for potentially some months. Therefore, they're executing on their project. And then they are closing the project, right? So all in all, the project is goes through a series of phases, and it is quote unquote done by this project team. The project team are a set of individuals from different areas coming together and working on the project. So in your own world, and if you're not in that space, think about anything potentially that you can think about, right? If you're in the cloud environment, things that are moving to the cloud, the applications that are moving to the cloud, people are migrating data, they might be developing applications on the cloud. There's the whole area of cybersecurity, right? Some things like the firewalls, the access controls, right? Hacking, preventing people from hacking, providing the right measures. Cybersecurity is another area of work in a company. And it's pretty big. Data analytics is huge, right? The AIs, the data analytics, the things like we heard about Tableau, building data models, APIs. Again, if you're not familiar with these fine terminologies, it's okay. The idea is that there's work around the data area that happens. There's work around what we call now is the digitalization, modernizations of your legacy applications, right? Moving all those old systems into new modernization, state of the art, giving those functionalities to the end users, customers, with the intent of delivering value, revenue shares, increasing your market. All that good stuff is all digitalizing the companies and modernization of your systems and platforms. And then there's areas of business operations, right? So traditionally, the data centers that have the servers and systems in there, uh, operations can also include the business operations, keeping the lights on. So, like simple example is your help desk tickets. If you have a computer that has a problem at work, you call your help desk, a person from the help desk will come in, get a ticket, help you resolve that. That's business operations, right? So no matter what space you're in, all of these are considered as projects. Now, again, still traditional, not going too much in the details, but consider all the effort around this as being some project that the work is getting delivered. So we have the PMO, we have project management, we have all these kinds of projects that are done. The project manager is this individual who is a person who helps manage the project, right? on bringing the teams together, coordinating the activities, the tasks, the schedules, status reporting, all that stuff. So if you're new to this field and this is something that you want to explore, project management or project manager would be an area to dive into. Just below that is somebody called a project analyst or a coordinator. You might be totally new to this space, and the question is, where do I start? You typically may end up starting as a project coordinator. What does this individual do? This individual obviously helps and supports the project manager in their day-to-day effort. Like, what are those efforts? The individual might be helping them with capturing the meeting minutes, doing some action item reporting, following up on the tasks of individuals. So somebody in the call may have a task that they have to do, and you as a project manager have to go and reach out to this individual, ask this individual, where are you in this task? Have you completed this? So reporting of that task comes back. You have to schedule meeting with all the individuals on the project called meetings, right? Project meetings are very common. So this individual, which might be a project analyst or coordinator, may actually support the administrative efforts with the intent that, at some point this person will graduate or might move to the project management space. Okay? So that is the way a project manager operates in this environment. So then, as we mentioned, right, the other way of managing work is the agile way of things. And agile is not new, and we'll talk about the timeline in the next slide. And this is really my definition, right? Just to kind of simplify things for people. Um, Agile has actually evolved from software development. So the most common question I'm asked is Agile only for technology? The answer is no, it is not only for IT. The way Agile has spread in the areas is it's cut through not just technology, but very huge emphasis now is on the business as a whole, right? Is your business agile enough? And what is agile? The definition of agile is adaptive, change. Is your business at that level of position themselves in a way that they can quickly adapt to changes? Changes could be, market rhythms. It could be market conditions, customer feedback. Pandemics is a huge way to adapt and change, right? If you're in a company currently, many of you might be working remotely. Was your company set up to support you that? Was your company agile enough to make that quick transition to that idea? So agile is about that philosophy and idea about being adaptive and being able to change. Um, what's the ultimate goal for companies, right? And not just companies, even at the individual level, the ultimate goal for the company is to deliver some business value, right? As a company, if I exist as a company, I am obviously delivering some value to my customers, and that's agile kind of helps you deliver that business value and solutions. And how does it do that? We'll briefly talk about that. Yeah, and quality obviously is a big concern and a very important aspect of any work that you do, whether you do code development, anything else. Just the product going out in the market should be of quality, right? You don't want to have a product, just maybe as simple as a toy for you, and that toy breaks within a day of use, right? That's bad quality. If that were to happen, the chances are you may not buy the same brand or go back to the same seller and buy the same product. So, what is Agile? It is about breaking work down into small pieces or small items. How is that done? It is done through ways called iterations, right? So small pieces of work is delivered in 2 weeks. 2 weeks is all you deliver work in. Now, can you deliver a massive work in 2 weeks? The answer is absolutely not. But if you have a boundary of 2 weeks, and this 2 weeks is called iterations or sometimes sprints. So many of you may have heard it, some of you may have not heard it, but the idea about agile of delivering work in sprints is that what can I do as an individual, as part of a team, within an organization, or an organization as a whole? what value can I deliver in 2 weeks? Now, obviously, you can only deliver small pieces of work, right? You cannot massively create a building in 2 weeks. So, but you can start with small elements of that. So again, breaking down big piece of work into small items, delivering those pieces into 2 weeks increment, right? Now, there is a option of 1 to 4 weeks as a good practice in the Agile communities, but 2 weeks has been a very standard approach that many companies have adapted to. Agile is also about responding to change. Like I mentioned, right? We have to be adaptive. We want to respond to change. So any changes, we want to be able to respond to those changes quickly. We cannot possibly sit on it and let ourselves, basically be taken away from our market share. We have to quickly respond to changing conditions. It allows you to get short feedback loops. The fact that you're doing things in 2 weeks, sprints, increments, and that you're breaking things down into smaller items, you have the opportunity to talk about them or show those working products or work that you've done in 2 weeks to your team members, to your business stakeholders, to your business owners, to your customers if you have the opportunity to do that. And then you get quick feedback on those. So the feedback, as we all know, is a benefit, right? So the more feedback you get, the better chances of you to improve on that. So you can actually ultimately succeed in the process. And ultimately, the goal is to constantly improve and evolve, right? If you are a person or a company that says, we are perfect, there's nothing for me or the company or department to improve on, you're probably fooling yourself. Everybody, there's always an opportunity to improve on. One example is just the seminar. The last seminar, as I mentioned, I did a retrospective and I got feedback from people, and some feedback to me was very important because as I said, we were probably in different tangents and all over the place. And so this intent here was, no, the feedback I took back is we will keep it very structured. Every session will be structured with the opportunity to obviously have questions, interactions, but we won't entertain questions from all spectrum, okay? And the emphasis is on people, results, and collaboration. So let's watch a little quick video on what that Agile really means. And I'm going to share my screen in a split second for you guys. My audio is also shared, so you should be able to hear it, okay? So 1 second.
Is Agile? What is Agile? Today, I'm going to attempt to demonstrate Agile by playing football with a pencil. Oh, and stick around to the end because I have a big favour to ask. Hi, my name is Gary Strawn. Welcome to Development That Pays, the channel dedicated to profitable software development. We do an episode like this every Wednesday, and if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing and hit the bell icon to make sure you don't miss a thing. This is St James's Park, home of Newcastle United Football Club. I was born in Newcastle and grew up a few miles out of town. In Newcastle, they say that football isn't life or death. It's more important than that. Alas, my own football skills were distinctly lacking. But there was a game we'd play at the back of the classroom when the teacher wasn't looking. Football, kind of. I'm sketchy on the rules. I guess we'd take turns to get across the pitch and...
Nice strike! Oh, better than nice! Wonderful!
It struck me recently that the game is a rather lovely demonstration of Agile. We have value delivered in small increments as the ball makes its way up the pitch.
Oops.
And we have the opportunity to course correct. Turns out that it's easy to recover from a wayward first kick. It's taken me decades to work out how to really play this Agile. And
nice strike! Oh, better than nice! Wonderful!
It struck me recently that the game is a rather lovely demonstration of Agile. We have value delivered in small increments as the ball makes its way up the pitch. and we have the opportunity to course correct. Turns out that it's easy to recover from a wayward first kick. It's taken me decades to work out how to really play this game. Now, where did I put my special pencil?
Okay, so keeping it short. So you see how interesting that video was. I found something just recently. I said this is a great example of how Agile is. You see that whole activity or game was really about smaller steps that you take, right? Baby steps, and you're kind of course correcting yourself. When I went in the wrong direction, because I just took one step, I have the opportunity to now course correct and actually go towards my end goal. And that's really a demonstration, a great demonstration, in my opinion, of simplifying what Agile is about. Okay, so I appreciate that video that was put up on YouTube. So just to again double check, my screen is shared, correct? Because once I move to different slides, I want to just validate. Actually, yep. Okay. Thank you for validating that. I'm going to go back to that. All right. So we spoke about two styles, right? So the waterfall, which is the traditional way of managing projects, and the agile way of managing work. In the example that I gave you in the waterfall, I mentioned that it goes through many phases. And generally, these phases are requirements, and requirements are what is required that I need to do to deliver the project, to deliver a website maybe, or deliver a service. So if you are an educational system and you're creating an educational platform for the schools and the students, that's an entire project in itself. It's pretty big. And then you would have requirements, right? As a requirement, you would say, okay, we need to have requirements for students and teachers and administrative staff. And then you design that website, so to speak, right? You just months. What happens in the design phase in the world is you spend a lot of time actually. You have something called the high level design, and then sometimes you go down to low level designing, and how does the design work, and you kind of put everything in paper, and then you end up developing those designs into actually working product, right, or services or software. And that itself could take several months to actually develop a large scale application like that. Once that development is done, you are now testing the work. So now you're at the testing stage of the process, right? So I'm just gonna quickly see if this works for me. So this is a very long process. You're testing the work, then it could be multiple rounds of testing, and then eventually you're deploying this particular application, and then you get the outcome in the very end when the application is deployed, when the customers are using it. The agile way of doing things is, as I mentioned, is the short intervals, right? The what we call are the sprints. So these are my 2 weeks sprints versus several months, correct? And years per se, potentially. So the idea here is that let's gather enough information, i.e. requirements. Let's design it, develop and test and deploy it for that small piece of work, small piece of functionality, a small piece of code. It's the fact that you're doing it, you only have 2 weeks. You can only do so much in 2 weeks, which is okay, because the idea is let me do a little piece of work so I can show and get feedback, and like the course correction video we saw. So if I do one step, I get quick feedback. I'm in the right direction. Perfect. Let me do the next step. Oh, this is not really the direction I want you to be in. Can you make some changes? Great. The next 2 weeks, I'm going to make that change. And then again, come back and say, okay, this is where I am. Is this okay? And they were like, oh, this is perfect. This is what I want. So as you see, you're doing work, same idea, same project, same ultimate goal, but you're breaking that ultimate goal into small pieces of work and small times. And again, therefore, the idea is you get cumulative outcome, right? Every time you deliver some potential value, then you're getting outcome out of that. So that, again, is a nutshell of what the difference between the way of waterfall projects do and how Agile works in the world. So this is an agile timeline of how things started. And the agile, as I mentioned, is not new. It started way back in the idea about lean manufacturing. So there's something called lean manufacturing, and this comes from the Toyota production system, and it was developed by Teiichi Ono. And the idea behind this particular um, methodology was about trying to eliminate waste. So if you think about Toyota, which is an automotive company, they're building cars, and to build cars, you need all these inventory and products to assemble. You potentially cannot have, um, you know, warehouses full of inventory that you may not need right away. So the idea is called just in time. Just in time production is making only what is needed, only when it is needed, and only in the amount that is needed. So just in time, JIT as it's called, is only having the right enough things to do as what I need today and the amount that I need today. So there's no wastage, right? So the whole idea about lean generally is about avoiding any wastage. And long story short, that idea was done around in the 1990s, and a study was done by MIT and Harvard Business School on the automotive industry, which resulted in a book called Machine That Changed the World, the story of lean production. This was the birth of lean production development in the US. And as the timeline sees, you then started all these different methodologies of development that came in from the software about RAD, which is called Rapid Application Development. And this was about prioritizing rapid protocol releases. It was less structured. Then you hear about something called DSDM, which is the Dynamic System Development Method. It was an alternate to RAD. So when RAD came in, the DSDM said, you know what, you are pretty not structured, so I'm going to come with my own idea. And this was heavy on principles and philosophies. Uh, Bottom in the structure is called XP. XP is a pretty famous methodology. It was about improving software quality and responsiveness to changing customer requirements. It was developed by Ken Blake, Ward Cunningham, and Ron Jeffries, and this was the XP world, right? So XP started. Crystal, there's another methodology called Crystal. But I'll take you to the timeline briefly. Scrum, which is the most used methodology, was developed by Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber, and they came together. And the intent of Scrum was based on the idea of rugby. So in a rugby sport, if you see, there's people of teams of 10 or fewer, and they all come together and they kind of plan something out with the ultimate goal that they want to deliver to, right? So Scrum generally is about a time boxing events. It's about sprints, like we called and we spoke about, and kind of delivering value in small increments through this idea called Scrum team. Okay, so small teams of individuals coming together to deliver goals in that 2 weeks increment. Um, 2001 was actually a big movement. This is where the whole entire agile movement started. And it started by these group of 17 software developers who gathered together on a 2-day event in snowbird ski resort in Utah, with the intent that we'll come together and kind of brainstorm and come out with a lightweight development method. So as you can imagine, 17 people coming together and trying to agree on something was potentially a little hard ask. So they couldn't agree on a standard development method, but what they did agree on is called the Agile Manifesto. Okay, and we'll look at a quick video on that and a slide on that. So that's what Agile Manifesto is, how it came about. Um, and then through the series, things have been developing in the Agile community. You see a lot of lean software development. Kanban is another, Kanban as it's called, right? Another way of development. It's a method. And then there's also something called Scaled Agile, which many of you have probably heard me talk about in the other groups, in the trainings that I do on SAFE. And that doesn't end there. There's probably, I don't know, 30 certifications and areas of practices that are happening out there. So that's just to give an example of the agile timeline. Okay, so let's quickly look at another video. And I'm doing these videos just to keep it more interactive. I don't want to be the only person boring you. So hopefully this is a little bit more engaging. So let's watch this.
Back in the 90s, IT projects were managed by the Waterfall methodology, where the executed tasks cascaded from analyzing the requirements to designing, implementing, testing, and rollout. Although the approach was exceedingly structured and organized, clients were not satisfied. In fact, what was happening was that most parts of the projects were out of budget, time, scope, and quality, and clients were dissatisfied. Even when projects were on time, within budget and scope, and of good quality, clients were still unsatisfied. But why? Simply because what they asked for was not necessarily what they really needed. That was the case until some software practitioners created a set of alternative approaches. 17 of those individuals decided to gather in November 2001 in a ski resort in Utah, US, where they came up with the Agile Manifesto, a new mindset focusing on 4 values and 12 principles rather than on a predefined blueprint. These values are 1. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. 2. Working software over comprehensive documentation. 3. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. 4. Responding to change over following a plan. And the principles are about customer satisfaction, embracing changes, speed delivery, collaboration, empowerment, effective communication, good metrics, steadiness, operational excellence, simplicity, self-organization, continuous improvements. Today, thanks to the 17 innovative visionaries, we can, through adopting the Agile mindset, embrace changes to improve performance and reach client satisfaction. Thank you.
Okay, so let me just make sure I stop it before it goes to the next one. Okay, so that's another interesting brief video about the Agile Manifesto. I'm just gonna quickly check on my chat. I know there's something that's originally recorded for the session. Yeah. Okay, so as you saw, right, what is the Agile Manifesto? Again, this was about discovering or uncovering rather better ways of developing software. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Agile is not only about software development. There's a huge movement on Agile for human resource, marketing Agile, financials, Agile in finance, just business in general is moving to the idea of Agile. So it did start with the software development, but it's actually grown in different areas. Okay, so if you happen to be a person in the finance or in HR, and the question is, should I know what Agile is? The answer is yes. If you want to be a leader in that HR department, and if you learn about how to run HR in an Agile way, and how Agile teams of HR can actually be formed, something called people's team, and all that good stuff. How you can do employee engagement surveys, their performance reviews. All of that potentially is a huge area of agility in itself. So as I said, it's actually grown into many areas, and we can probably talk, if there's a lot of people in the HR space, I can probably do a seminar just on Agile HR for you guys. Okay, so to come back to the manifesto, the concept about the manifesto was individuals and interaction, that we want to constantly meet people and we want to interact with people, and we just don't want to do processes and tool. As I said, just over process and tool. It's not that we don't do the things on the right. Even to be an agile and successfully be an agile company, you have to have some processes in place, right? You have to have some tools in place, and there are fantastic tools out there that make your life easier actually to manage the work in agile as teams and that stuff. So it's not to ignore a process, but it is more important to have an interaction with individuals than just having a tool and a process in place. The idea about software and working software more so is, or I would say more working delivery, is because as you work through these 2 week sprints, you have something that you want to present to. And the best measure to show what you've done is a working software. Imagine, and I tell this in my training and my sessions, to imagine if you have a training document of 500 pages, and that basically tells you everything about the application. Is it easier to read that 500-page document to understand a comprehensive document to understand the application, or is it more effective that if I can actually see a working software? So that's the idea behind that. Customer collaboration, back to the whole idea about include your customers. Maybe they have an idea. Again, sometimes customers themselves don't know what they want. So it's not about that, but it's about including them as part of the effort, right? And then responding to change or following the plan. Do people in the agile world have a plan? The answer is absolutely. It is not like Waterfall had a great Microsoft project plan and Agile has no planning. It's contradictory, or really more opposite to that is, in fact, in Agile, I believe you actually plan a lot more than you do. You almost plan every day, looking at your daily work that you are doing as an individual, as part of a team. You're actually planning your 2 weeks sprints every 2 weeks, right? In some cases, depending on the framework, you're probably planning again, in addition to those, you're planning every quarter. And then you have the entire idea about being able to change and adjust. So you're actually planning your 6 months, you're planning your 1 year, and you're revisiting those plans and constantly changing those plans because things are changing around you. So if anything, you're actually planning more and you're responding to those changes. Okay, so that's the Agile manifesto for you guys. Agile is an umbrella of framework. Okay? We have, as I mentioned, many frameworks out there. And I would just recommend that if you ever exploring some of these, um, do your homework. Reach out to me over text. Be a little careful where you spend your, a dollar, even if it's a couple of dollars. You want to make the best use of your time and your money, right? So, as I tell people that, um, you know, be careful. You want to invest in the right places. Again, so I can at least guide you in where to invest. And trust me, not everything. There's not a fixed answer for, or one answer for everybody. So many times I understand each individual's environments, constraints, areas, backgrounds, experience, and then recommend something. And it could be very different recommendation for different people. Many times I've actually told people not to take some of the safe classes that I teach because it's not right for them. So you're not in that particular area to make the best use of that education and certification. So I would stop you from doing that, but I would recommend something else based on your background. So long story short, Scrum is another a framework within the Agile umbrella. Kanban, as I mentioned, we mentioned about lean software development. We mentioned about XP and several other areas of methodologies. On the right side, these particular areas are more lightweight just because it's at a team level. And then, but in our reality, these organizations are pretty big in nature, right? They're enterprises organizations. So they actually go from not just one team, but they go to many teams, and many teams have to collaborate. There are many frameworks around that help you how to collaborate value across different teams. And SAFe, as I mentioned, is one of them. Scrum at Scale is another one of them. And there are quite a few there. Okay. So that's basically, and we'll actually talk about SAFe briefly in the last slides. So all in all, who's adapting, right? Okay, I get this is agile. I kind of understand a little bit about it, but really, who's adapting? So there's a survey done every year called the Agile State of Annual Report, and this was the most recent one done last year by version 1. And what they do is it's a very well balanced survey. It's not biased, in my opinion. It goes across organizations, across the globe, in different industries, and does an assessment. Okay, who's doing what. So what it came out is that 90% of the people that reported that organization practices are doing some agile, right? 97% of respondents report their organization practices agile development. So there's really no way out, right? What happens maybe a decade later, we don't know. There might be another framework that comes in. But currently, the way things are going, and I've been doing this for over maybe 2.5 years when I started training people in the community. And back then, I told them, this is what it is and how they should explore it. And if you were in that position 2.5 years ago, getting a job in this agile domain was very easy back then because it was so new. And just by having one particular certification, you would have got a job. So even if you're not there, it is challenging out there currently. So again, be a little mindful of your own environments and constraints, but companies majority of them are all, as we see in the survey, are doing some level of agile development. And of the frameworks and the umbrella framework that we mentioned, Scrum happens to be the most used out there. There are a lot of other ones that are now like quote unquote hybrid. People kind of mix a few methodologies together. Kanban is actually pretty nice too. I like that. It can be used in many different areas. Their Scrum may not be a good candidate for, and we can talk about those in a different series. But all in all, this is what's happening in the industry out there, right? And who's using? Every company out there, right? Whether you're in the financial, every bank I know, whether US, Canada, they're doing it, right? I mean, they're running into this agile ideas. Pharmaceuticals are moving to, major pharmaceuticals are moving to, insurance domains are moving to agile. I mean, obviously from the digital space, there's no question, right? Amazons and the Netflixes or Googles they don't even talk about agile. That's how they've been growing, and that's how they've actually formed. That's the birth of how it happened. So for them, it just doesn't make sense. Like, what is agile? We do this every day. So, but all the traditional companies, as you see, are moving to this idea about agility. Yeah? Scrum, very briefly, what is Scrum? And if you go to scrumguides.org, or if you Google Scrum Guide, you will find a PDF version of a 17-page document. It is free. You don't have to pay for it. It talks about what Scrum is, and it kind of talks you a little more deep into the basics of Scrum. Read through that if you have time. It's not very simply written, but it will at least get you interested into some of the concepts, what it is about. So do that on your own. Take some time to explore. It is about collaborative approaches. It's about focusing on delivering business value. A lot of things that we mentioned, right? Early detection of removal, frequent planning, teams that are coming together, that are self-organizing, meaning they can actually pretty much perform and run by their own selves. They're well organized in the way they plan their stuff and how they execute on the work. They don't need, a big brother sort of kind of overlook them in every step of the way. The idea is that you are the most knowledgeable person when it comes to this particular work. So therefore, you are in the right position to organize yourself and deliver work and make some decisions on your own. Okay, and obviously the whole idea about work, and you can't just do everything, right? You have to have some level of prioritization. So it's important to prioritize the work in the order of priority and then work on those through those 2 weeks sprints. I know I'm speaking a lot. Maybe there are a lot of questions out there, but please bear with me because I do want to cover the content and then we can open up for questions. Okay, I think that's just fair for everybody's time. So we are doing some methodology and we are prioritizing work, but what is that work? How do I define that basic work? One of the most common ways of defining work in Agile is something called user stories. User stories, because it's based on user perspective. So if you were developing this educational system, your users are the students. Oops, if you can please go on mute. I hear some background noise. Your users are your professors, your teachers, the guidance counselors. Users are, give me one second. Okay. Your users are your accounting staff, your registration personnel, right? These are all users. So when you develop this particular system, you have to keep those individuals and users in mind. And the way you would write, quote unquote, the sentences called user stories, and there's a whole format of user stories, and that's our subsequent series about how will we gather requirements in Agile, or how do we estimate stories, and what is the ceremonies details about, what happens in those, the key roles and responsibilities of each of those individuals. So we'll build upon on those foundational knowledge later on, but this is very foundational. So just so you know that you want to do work, and that work is captured by something called user story. It's user's perspective. And that work goes in something called a backlog. So it's all about products, and you're doing a backlog. And backlog is nothing but a wish list of things that you potentially want to do for this educational application, right? Anything and everything you can imagine is a work that goes into this backlog as user stories. When do you do them? Depending what's more important, right? And how do you define what's more important? You kind of come back as a team and understand, okay, what's the most important that I want to do today or this sprint, and what's the next story I want to do in the next 2 weeks and the following and following. There is a hierarchy of or a structure that's defined, and there are a lot of tools out there that allow you to put stuff in the structure and then kind of manage that workflow. So a very common structure is something called epic. Of something underneath the epic is called feature, and underneath the feature are the stories. So if I deliver a bunch of stories, at some point when I deliver X number of stories, I potentially are delivering some feature uh, based on that. Okay. Well, and again, future sessions, but know that there's something called a product backlog. It's a wish list. It's a set of prioritized stories, and the more the stories that are on the top level. I mean, I don't want to visualize this because in the tool it doesn't matter. You just, let's say the order, let's say this was priority 1, 2, 3. Anything that's on the high priority are the stories that are very well defined for the teams and individuals to work on. Anything that's not well defined is at the low priority, right? So I may want something potentially maybe 3 months down the road, and I'm not going to spend time today working on defining that. But if it's something that I want very soon in the next 2 weeks, I'm going to have those stories well defined. I'm going to prioritize that so that people can work on it. So the higher priority product backlog items are clear and more detailed than the ones that are in the low priority. Okay. Teams structure of a Scrum. So the Scrum team structure, really, to keep it simple, is this. There's an individual called a product owner. There's an individual called a Scrum master. And the rest of the team, or the individuals in the team, are your development team. The development team includes individuals such as the developers, the testers, the business analysts, other people in the leads, other subject matter experts, all the other people, and combined with the Scrum Master and the product owner become your Scrum team, okay? Or in some cases now the Agile teams. So those are your very high level roles in project in Agile. If you are a product owner, or you could be a business analyst and you want to maybe become a product owner, then to do that, you have a certain career path. You have certain certifications that are, some are good, some are not so good, within that product owner area. As a Scrum Master, or if you were coming from the Waterfall approach and you were the project, you would potentially want to start as a Scrum Master, right? Because you somewhat understand how project management was done, and you want to bring those and then kind of relate yourself in the Agile world. So you may fall in that Scrum Master position. Now, again, this is not standard, but it is one of the most obvious transition of roles if you want to come to the Agile space. And then Scrum Master, as we know, again, has many other certifications that are out there that you can actually start learning specifically on that. Okay. So very briefly, what are these roles and what do these individuals do? The product owner, as we mentioned, is a team member, right? He's not outside of the team. He or she is part of the team called the Scrum team. This individual is generally the voice of the customer. The product owner many times come from the business. They understand the business. They understand they're interacting with the customer. So they're the voice of the customer. They say, okay, my customer is looking for this particular functionality in this product, and they provide the vision and goal for the product. They have the content authority of the backlog. So we mentioned about the product backlog. So this individual owns or has the authority on the backlog, right? What is the story? Which is the most important story that we want to do? And this individual also has the responsibility to accept the work, accept the stories that the team is doing. So every 2 weeks when the team is doing something, they're developing these user stories based on user perspective. It could be different, right? In the agile, in the HR world, it could be HR, human resource related work. As an employee, my employee wants to be able to, put timesheets now in your mobile app. Right? That's a user perspective. So this product owner will accept those stories once they're done. Scrum Master is the individual that acts as a coach in this particular case. He or she is probably a little more well versed in some cases about the process in itself. They understand the whole methodology, is certified, understand scrums. So they're able to remind the teams about what the best process to be followed and the framework to be followed to be more productive in achieving the goals. This individual is responsible to facilitate all the Scrum related events and ceremonies that happen. We'll talk about that in the next slide. And this individual helps remove the blockers for the team, right? So if a person in the developer comes back and says, I cannot do something, I just, as a particular case, if I'm building something and I don't have a paint, then the Scrum Master will be like, okay, that's a blocker. Let me go to the paint shop and then get you a paint so you can do it. Right? It's a very simple example that anything that's blocking the people from doing work, the Scrum Master helps remove those impediments and bring those results out for the team. Okay, there's a question related. Can you please explain what backlog means here? It is a little confusing. Okay, so let's go back for the sake of benefit. The backlog is confusing. So it is not a physical backlog, right? I cannot potentially have a bag or something. So think about Excel. Simple enough, right? So Excel is, if you were, again, let's take our example of the college educational portal, right? In the Excel, the backlog, the title will say product backlog, and the product happens to be your educational system. And in the backlog, you would pretty much maybe, let's say, have 3 categories as an example, right? Student, then another tab for professors and teachers and educators, and maybe the other one for registration. So imagine an Excel spreadsheet. This Excel spreadsheet, you're calling this as your product backlog, and just to make it simple. And then we said we have 3 tabs: students, teachers, and the registration. Each of that tab will have lines of stuff like sentences, and these sentences are your user story. So in the students tab, in the first line, anything you can think about what a student would want from this portal. So as a student, I want to go to my education.org or edu website and log into my student portal, right? That's a very simple use case about a student wanting to log into their education portal. The second line item, which would be another user story, and I'm just making it very simple, and you're writing it from the user perspective. In our example, tab number 1 is student. So as a user, as a student, I want to be able to schedule my classes for my upcoming semester. As a student, I want to log into my portal and look at my week schedule. What classes am I taking? As a student, I want to look at each of my class and look at what room or what Zoom link do I need to connect to join my class, right? So that creation of that work is the backlog in itself. And it could be anything. It is what you want today, what you want tomorrow, what you want in the future, right? You could say that as a student, I want to be able to do the same thing on my Android or iPhones, potentially later in the process. Then the next tab is about professors and teachers, right? As a teacher, I want to have a teacher portal or professor portal where I can look at a list of all the students that are registered for my class. As a professor, I want to be able to look at each of the students and click on it and then look at assign them grades or assign them homework. So not to broaden this too much, but you get the idea, right? So this is something called a backlog. It's just a work that you want to define for this product to do at some point. And as I mentioned, there are a lot of tools that would allow you to kind of manage this a little better. I'm just giving you the very basic example of how you would do it in an Excel version. Okay, so hopefully that answers the question. We'll come back to the questions. Let's continue where we are for the sake of time. Scrum ceremonies, these are the ceremonies that are the standard ceremonies, the most important ceremonies that you have to kind of participate and do to be able to do Scrum well enough, right? So if you're skipping some of these, then you're probably not doing Scrum in the right ways that you should, because every ceremony, which is a meeting or an event where people come together, the teams come together, has a reason behind it and has an ultimate value around it. So by skipping them or just doing one of the few, and by calling yourself an agile team, you're probably doing disservice to yourself. So these are the 4 ceremonies. There's something called planning, sprint planning. There's something called stand-ups, reviews, and retros. And we'll talk briefly about what they are by one bullet points, and we'll get more detail into subsequent sessions. So what are those ceremonies? Planning, stand up, coming together, sprint review, retros, and refinement. So what is planning? Planning by definition is you want to come and plan. Who comes in plan? The team comes in plan. The team is your Scrum team. The Scrum team, as we mentioned, is the idea about rugby, right? So small teams of 10 people or less, which includes your product owner, Scrum Master, and the team. They're all coming together and planning work. What are they planning? They're planning user stories. What are they planning for? They're planning for that 2 weeks sprints. So every 2 weeks, or the beginning of that 2 weeks, those individuals or the teams, they come together for a certain number of time or hours, maybe 1 hour, maybe 4 hours, maybe 8 hours, depending on where you are in your maturity level and how well you do other things. You just come together, in our case virtually, and you plan the work as a team, what you are going to do in the next 2 weeks. So that's called, that event or that activity when you come together is called the sprint planning. When I've planned my work for 2 weeks, I want to be able to make sure I'm doing the right prioritized work. And if there are any blockers, I have the Scrum Master to help me out. So the next morning and the subsequent 9 days or 8 days, right? Because we're talking 2 weeks. So every morning, the entire team comes together again for 15 minutes. And all they do is ask 3 questions. Everybody around the room goes around and everybody talks about, what I as an individual has done since yesterday, what I plan to do between today, maybe 9 a.m. till tomorrow morning. And by the way, Scrum Master, can you help me out? I don't have paint. I cannot paint. Can you help me out get the paint, right? So that's my blocker. Once you're working through those 2 weeks and you're doing work as a team, as individuals, when that 2 weeks ends, at the end of the 10th day or the 10th day itself, you want to kind of come back again and show the work that you did, show the user stories that you did to the entire team, right? You want to show the work that you did. You want to also show the work not just to your team, potentially to the business owners and other people in the company, the stakeholders who have given you the money to do work, and you want to show them what value you've done and what work you've delivered. So coming together on the last day of that sprint, and that particular event, again, 1 hour, 2 hours, depending, it's called reviewing. So I am reviewing, or we as a team are reviewing and demoing and showing you the work that we did. Okay. And then as a team, you want to also improve constantly. You cannot say that we're perfect. So there's a ceremony called retrospective. Retrospective is again a small session that happens, and again the same teams come back together, the same individuals and the team comes together, and they look for opportunities to improve on. Okay, so this again about improving ourselves, and not just things that you did maybe not so good, but maybe there are things that you did great and it worked perfectly for your teams, and we should continue doing that. So again, the idea is looking back for your 2 weeks and again improving for the next 2 weeks, coming back, looking back your 2 weeks, and again improving for the next 2 weeks. So again, it's a constant cycle of improvement. And refinements are just an easy way to refine the work in our backlog. And in our backlog, we mentioned we have stories. So the stories that are the most well written or most well refined are the ones that are on the top of the priority, right? We said that anything that's on the top of the backlog is the most refined story. Anything that's on the bottom of the backlog is not well refined. So, but you want to constantly refine your stories. So in our case of the educational, if I had a story about, and I actually gave that example a little bit earlier. If I had a story about a student who was initially looking at his schedule or her schedule and looks at the classroom that he needs to go to, room number 114 is my class for I don't know, psychology. The story should now change, that this individual or the student should now go and look for the room, or the Zoom room rather, a Zoom link that the session is happening in, right? So because the changing conditions has forced you to refine the work, you never thought about it. So you have to quickly go and constantly keep on refining the work for the work that is more relevant and more important. So this is a great example of coming back and refining work for what is important, more important than it was maybe 3 months ago. So this is a calendar that I've put together just to kind of explain the answer, right? So um, if our 2 weeks were starting on a Wednesday, again, as a coach, this is my recommendation. I always tell people not to start on a Monday and a Friday for many reasons that are outside of this discussion. But if we were to start on a Monday, the first thing we do is plan for work, right? We want to plan. It's a little old. I should probably get rid of the daily stand-up and maybe make it broader, but the idea behind this is you come together and you plan for the next 2 weeks or the next 9 days. As I mentioned, every morning for 15 minutes, the team comes in daily and talks about how are they doing, right? What's blocking them? What have they accomplished? What did they plan to work on? And when you finish your 2 days, or sorry, 2 weeks, you want to come back and show what you did, which is the review session. And then you also want to come in, have an opportunity to talk as a team and improve on stuff. So this is a very simple laid out calendar of how you should visualize where these events happen in your 2 weeks of work. And then refinements can happen anywhere and anytime. Okay, so that's just an example of 3 areas. You don't want to overburden yourself in the team, so you have to be a little careful about how you manage the time. Okay, this is a simple Agile Scrum framework of how the framework works. And we've pretty much spoken about everything. So I'll just summarize it very quickly. We said that the product owner is a person who brings in or takes the idea from the vision and is the voice of the customer, right? So there's information flow coming from the customers and executives and stakeholders and businesses about what is that you want to do. We want to develop a educational portal. Okay, we said that the Scrum team, the Scrum Master and product owner are part of a team, and now they come back to get together to work on this product. The product owner is adding stuff in their product backlog, right? So product backlog is in our example for today is all the user stories, the students, the teachers, the accounting office in that Excel version, right? Is all backlog. And as we work on the top stories, that comes into my 2 weeks, which is my sprint, and I now want to only work on my on the top priority story. I'm going to plan for those. So this is our sprint planning. The Wednesday morning sprint planning comes in. I work on that particular stories, right? The maybe let's say 5, and this might have like 1,000 stories, and keeps on adding and adding and adding. We as a team, I should say, are going to work on the 5 stories that are the most important for the 2-week sprint. And every day we'll come together in the morning and talk about the work. And once the 2 weeks ends, I'm going to review my work and I'm going to show what I did. And then as an opportunity to improve, we want to constantly talk about how we can improve on the work we did. So as you see, it kind of summarizes a little bit of what the concepts that I mentioned. So that is our high level education class for what is Scrum about. So very briefly, let's talk about SAFe, and I could probably run another session just on SAFe. SAFe is one of the leaders in the market when it comes to enterprise agility, right? So they have a fantastic framework, and again, there are a lot of frameworks out there, and particularly this one is interesting because they've brought in a lot of good practices around different spectrums to kind of make this framework. And majority of the companies are implementing SAFe, which is the enterprise. Because remember, what we said was you potentially cannot just work on one team level. You as a Scrum Master may be part of a bigger company in an enterprise that has 4 other Scrum Masters. Maybe it has 10 other product owners. So we all have to work together. So this framework particularly brings in those good practices about bringing these concepts about lean, agile, DevOps, delivering value, business agility, all moving it to the scale. Scaling is going up, going bigger, going at the enterprise level. So the SAFe framework in a nutshell is this is how it looks. It's a little complicated when you look at it, but it's actually very, very well structured and it's very easy to understand. If you're interested in this particularly SAFe methodology, I teach a lot of classes. There's like probably 12 or 14 classes out there. So depending on what you need and your role is, we can figure out. But if you're interested, it tells you that, the easiest way I can explain this to you is that, many certifications are at the team level. The SAFe certification gives you that team level plus, right? So if I am a particular individual at a team level, but I'm also part of a bigger organization, the framework tells you how to act as a particular individual at a team level, but also shows you the ways that you need to know and learn and be part of a bigger program. And what they call is the Agile release train. So you have a huge Agile release train of 50 to 125 people plus, and everybody's working together to deliver something. It is just not you and the 5 of us in a team, but team 1, team 2, team 3, team 4, team 5, team X coming together and working together collaboratively. And that's the whole methodology about SAFe. Okay, so again, if just a quick tidbit, evaluate your options before you decide what to do. So this is again a granular process of how SAFe mostly operates at most of our levels, right? Where you might be in your role as a team participant, maybe in a business context, maybe an HR person, maybe a Kanban team, maybe a Scrum team. You could be a product owner, you could be a Scrum Master, you could be a product manager, you could be a quote unquote program manager, you could be a business owner. So all of these very key roles and most common roles come together and they work in this particular area for team agility. Okay, so that's a very short demonstration of what the framework is. And as you can see, if you were on site, you would have a huge room full of people planning the work, right? You plan for X number of sprints. You actually put team goals, you plan as a team, then you plan as a train, and then you present yourself, about what the goal is. So this is me coaching and reminding teams about, what is the next session, what would you guys do, how. So we stand up teams at where I work. So I do a lot of coaching in that area. Okay, so that's pretty much, we're around a good time. We're going to stop for a second. We're going to go through the question answers. We're going to do question answers on the chat. Then we'll do question and answer on the phone. And then we'll do a quick retrospective. So just bear with me for the retro. I do want to get your feedback. So in closing, you all have somewhat connected to me, whether through LinkedIn or WhatsApp. Reach out to me for any guidance. I will apologize up front. I don't take calls right away. I am a little behind in my texting, but I do my best job to get back to you. So don't get saddened or offended if I don't get an opportunity to quickly respond back. If you are interested in any of the certification in Agile, let me know. Particularly coming up in my pipeline is the Scrum Master for SAFE, how to be a Scrum Master in the team, but also in the enterprise level. It's this coming weekend, 13th and 14th. Fortunately, good amount of people are registered. So if you're interested, we can talk. If you're not in that level of enterprise and you just want to understand being a Scrum Master or a product owner, actually, we're coming up with a nice business analyst certification, very interesting one. I'm waiting for that. But you just want to be at the team level, but you also want to get certified, right? So there's the training aspect where people will train you probably for the same amount of money, where you can potentially may get options to get certified. So be cognizant of that. So you have multiple options, free webinars, always open, training if we decide to do more, certification at the team level and at the program level. Okay, so that's an all in all. In closing, there's again DevOps, Advanced Scrum Master boot camps. So let's quickly look at Q&A and let's get to it, and then we will do a quick retrospective. So I am opening up my chat. I'm gonna share that with everybody's benefit. Okay, so let's see. Would it be possible to record? Yes, I am recording it. We will upload it. Yes. Do we need any prior experience to start with basics? No, the basic itself is foundation, right? So many people who have no experience, they have to start somewhere, and all the basic level education, whether you do webinars or training or some certification at the basic foundation level, is your stepping stone. But as I tell people, be cognizant about what you're spending, because it doesn't mean that just because you got a certification and you spend whatever number of dollars, it doesn't guarantee you any job, right? You may, if you have zero experience but have your certification, does it mean you'll get a job? It's very hard. It's almost very hard to say that. But what I can tell you one thing is, again, it's water down the road, right? 2 years ago, it was a different situation. But I'll tell you one thing: if you understand what you learn, if you're able to understand the most complex things into a simple process, and you kind of hold that thought, you should be able to communicate that back to people, right? So my conscious effort is to not muddy the waters. Even in the classes I teach where there's complicated slides, I try to make them simple enough so people can take back information. So if you're able to understand those put simply, and you can able to communicate that back simply without getting too confused with your terminology, then hopefully you are able to succeed in your interviews, right? And if you're at a point where you have the experience and you may have a certification, but you understand the concepts, let me know if you have an interview coming up, especially now if you're in a job market and you are struggling. I offer, mock interviews help with two people. Again, I can't promise everybody, but I'll do my best to help you groom or brush your skills, assuming you understand the foundation. If you come to me and ask me really basic questions, then it's challenging for me to do any interviews with you. I would recommend to keep the question in the end. Okay, do you need any prior experience? We spoke about that. I joined lately. Can you share information about options to take the Scrum or Agile certification? Yeah, sure. Ping me on WhatsApp. You have my number. If you don't, it's here right here, 908-419, 9392. WhatsApp me and ping me, and we will figure out what's works best for you. Okay. Backlog refinement, story grooming. Okay, I may have missed it. Let me just go back. Sorry. Oh wow, a lot of questions. Interesting. Okay. So do we need any prior? We spoke about that. Okay. Not able to hear. That's not a question. Your voice is very slow. I was trying to be very slow. I was trying to make sure I don't rush things out. Can you fix your voice? I don't know about that. I'm gonna have to go for a surgery for that one. Can you share the link of your YouTube channel? Yes, I will. Thanks, I'm able to hear. What is the difference between Agile versus DevOps? Interesting. So Agile, as we spoke, is an umbrella of different framework. DevOps is the way development work and operations come together. And again, there's a whole different series of DevOps. Hopefully, that's also my plan to do that. And we'll talk about that. So I'll table that, but it's very, very different. DevOps could be considered as part of being agile as an organization, as a team. So if you're doing DevOps, you're agile. If you're not doing DevOps, you could say you're not agile enough. So, okay. What is the difference between agile and Scrum? So agile is the umbrella. Scrum is just one of many, many, many frameworks and methodologies within the agile umbrella. Okay, so agile is just an umbrella or an overview. Can agile be applied to fixed bid projects in software development? So that's an interesting question. That's a little more advanced for this particular session. But there's ways about managing vendors and managing contracts, procurement, all of that stuff happens, and there's ways of doing it in agile. Is it the most mature proven methodology in that space? Probably not. They're also evolving, but there's ways that you can kind of bring or move towards that concept of doing fixed bid projects in that with the agile mindset. Okay. All right. Is PO not the same as business analyst? No, they're two different roles. But the business analyst obviously also works with the customer, but they are two different roles. Business analyst many times is the person who's gathering requirements. And many times, if you're a business analyst, hey, why don't you apply for a product owner role? Because you are very close to that work anyways, and you should consider yourself moving up and becoming a product owner in your career. I would recommend to keep the questions. Okay, we spoke about that. Can you please explain what we did that? I'm currently waiting to break into the IT industry. Is it true getting a Scrum Master position is difficult versus a Scrum Master who has development experience? The answer is no. Getting a Scrum Master certification has got nothing to do with having development experience. It is about more of facilitation, soft skills, communication skills, understanding the Scrum methodology, all that stuff. Is it hard? It is hard. Everything is hard right now. And anytime when you don't have experience, breaking into any industry is hard. So there's no really a silver bullet saying that, you take the certification and then you get into the industry. A lot of factors go around it. How you understand, how you communicate, how you present yourself, how you position yourself, a lot of stuff, right? Knowledge, how much knowledge you're gaining, how much experience that you're trying to evolve, all that stuff. So the reason behind that, companies want to wide spectrum employees with, okay, I'll skip that. I'm not quite sure the second part. Okay. The product backlog is a list of new features, changes to existing features, bug fixes, so on and so forth. Okay, so that might be an answer. Feature wish list of delivery. I think product owner is a part of the business. Ideally, product owner will be part of the business. Okay, so let's skip through this. Anything particular? Then maybe next time we should put a question in front so I can only look at questions. Right? Question for when we are ready to do QA. Okay, is there any change during a sprint? Okay, would the new requirements user story be accommodated in the current sprint? If that also results in more time work, how can we complete that in the current sprint? Okay, this is a little more advanced question for you that I can go on for another 30 minutes explaining that. Second questions, if the new, so I would question this back at some point to the person, ping me. I want to understand what training you've received, because that would have been addressed in some level of training you may have taken. If not, we can figure out a solution. Can a user story ever trace? Okay, so there's handful of questions. I'm gonna skip that. Probably needs a lot of coaching here. Can we break for Nawaz? Is art the same thing as value stream? No, the answer is no. They're very different. What is the difference between Scrum Retro and Scrum Refinement? Two different ceremonies, as we mentioned. Retro is about improving, looking back, things they can do better, so on and so forth. Refinement is about refining and cleaning up your stories, so to speak, right? Writing them better and having the XYZ elements in there so it's understood. I would request everyone to, if it would be better if you can turn off your videos, turn off our videos. This will probably be, oh, okay, I didn't realize that. Please explain agile modeling, not for this class. How do you manage business teams? Fatigue, not for this class. Did you have the recording for the first version? Yes. What are the opportunities for engineering? Engineers getting into learning agile process. You can probably look into lean manufacturing, lean certifications if that's what you're interested. Can you please share? I have somebody, I'm not teaching that particularly, but I know somebody is doing a Kanban certification, 4-day certification. So again, those are paid, so different discussion. Does Scale Agile? No. So Be Agile has got nothing to do with that. Be Agile is just me, my name, my brand. Uh, Scale Agile is one of the frameworks in the right side of the umbrella, as we said. Remember, and I circled it, was Scale Agile. So it is another methodology in the Agile umbrella. Okay. Do we have to go through training to sit to Scrum? Yeah. So depends. For most of the instructor-led training are AA, it's paid, but many of them, to be a Scrum Master, you have to go through 2 days of classes. Now, there are many other options where you don't have to go through training. If you know your stuff, you can take the exam. They may range from like $0 and something $69 to like $150, where you can just take the exam on your own. Actually, that reminds me, I'm going to post something in my Be Agile group. There was an offer that I found, and another person just reminded me about a free certification for Scrum Master. But again, that's exam. That's assuming you, and I believe it was free. So I'll figure out if it's no harm in $0, right? Try it out. If you fail, you fail. But if you understand the Scrum area, you're not certified. Really, within $150 or less, you can get certified without taking any class. Okay. I am a system admin working as Windows and stuff like that, more into the operation. Is this training relevant to me? So this is training. If you don't know anything about Agile, if you know anything, it's free. I mean, it's just time investment. If after if you're still on the call, you tell me if this was valuable in the retro, if it helped you. It's really up to you if you want to. Oh, if you want to go to ITIL, I'm sorry. ITIL is another certification. Again, look at market opportunities and decide for yourself. If you feel Agile is something that you want to explore, you have ways of learning. Can customer be present in this sprint retro? No, it is about the team. The customer is not part of the team. You mentioned BA analyst. What is the next BA session? Oh, the BA analyst actually is not ready yet. It's a certification class, and I'm really excited when it's ready. It's part of my other support work I do. It is a paid certification, but economical. There's, as I said, if there's options that I've come research and come to my Be Agile people to do anything that's under the 500 range, right? What classes can you teach me that would certify me, but I have a budget no more than $500. So we have a whole series of information. If you have a budget of 200 less, I'll tell you what to do. 300 less. If you have a budget of 700, 800 and you want to do Scale Agile in that range, within 1,000, we'll talk about that. So many options. As soon as I have that ready, I always obviously share and publish that. I have the Save $5 certification. Fantastic. Congratulations. What should be my next? So that is a very broad question. Save 5.0 certification is our 14 certification. Which 5.0 certification do you have? Do you have a Scrum Master? Do you have a product owner? Do you have a leading Save? Do you have Save practitioner? So be specific. So ping me, Iqbal, and I will help you there, and I can guide you which one to do. I asked the training question. I have done some test dumps and score up to 90, 95%. Okay, great. Want to get straight to the certification. Would like to provide source. What do you do? Okay, so ping me if you are ready, and if you've done some test dumps, and I don't know which ones you did, but let's assume you did something, and you want to go straight out of certification. I'm going to post the free one, which is a special offer, and then I'm going to post the more recognized one, which is through scrum.org. $150. You go to scrum.org, scrum.org, and if you are a scrum master or product owner, you pay $150 and you can take your certification. Again, it is hard. You should know your stuff. You should read the Scrum guide at least 3 times. If you fail that, then you obviously wasted your $150. But that's a small investment that if you choose to do, if you pass that, congratulations, you have some certification that will help you. Okay, so ping me separately. I'll get you more, guide you more specifically. Okay, so last 2 questions, and we're going to jump to the next session, the retro. Is the PO responsible for defining product backlog? The answer is yes. Who owns and is responsible? Okay, so product backlog and sprint backlog are kind of a little 2 things. It's not the Scrum Master. So when it comes down to the sprint, it is the team that manages that work, because product owner told us as a team saying, okay, these are my 5 most important stories. And then the team will decide, okay, which out of the 5, how do we estimate them? How do we make sure we have a goal around this and stuff like that? So it comes down to the sprint backlog, and this product owner obviously is part of the sprint, and he or she will still be there to help you. It just, you took the 1,000 stories and you said, okay, let's only focus on these 5, and that becomes your sprint backlog. So how is Scrum.org different than Scrum Alliance? 2 different bodies of certification. As I mentioned, there are 2 founders. They kind of came up eventually from the Scrum manifesto, the Agile manifesto, they kind of separated out, and there are 2 different bodies of practice. Scrum Alliance, you have to take the 2-day class. You have to take the 2-day class. Scrum.org, you don't have to take the 2-day class. You can just take the exam. So that's the key differentiator of cost. And then they're both good in the industry. There are a couple of more ones that are well recognized. And then, but if you decide to do one or the other, especially the Scrum Alliance, I don't disagree with that. I have all the Scrum Alliance certification, the CSP being the highest one, I have that. But ping me separately and we'll figure out if that's the best approach for you to take based on your role. Okay, so that ends my chat questions. No more of those chat questions. Let's open the call really quickly for 5 questions on the phone. If somebody has questions, just 5 questions, we'll entertain that. And then we will do the quick retro, and then we can wrap up right around our 2-hour slot, okay?
Hello, Imtiaz. This is Tahir Khan from Houston, Texas. I have a Scrum certification from Scrum Alliance. It's more than a year and a half, but still struggling to find a job.
Yeah, so as I said, right, unfortunately, it's tough because just getting a certification doesn't give you, guarantee you a job. And whenever you did that, maybe a year and a half ago, I asked people, if you did the certification, do you understand? Did you learn? Can you kind of put that in practice? Can you explain to me how you would run a Scrum ceremony based on just the knowledge if you have? If you're struggling with that answer, then anytime you have an interview, you'll struggle. Now, getting an interview is a whole different game. I don't do any placements, unfortunately, but if I don't know how to answer that, job is tough. But if you, as I said, if you have an interview scheduled, and if you're trying to refine your lingo or the language, or groom your answers, I'm more than happy to help you, which if it helps you get a job.
I will ping you for a mock interview, sometime if you have time, so we can do the mock interview.
I mean, I will assess you first if you have the knowledge, the foundational knowledge, before we do the mock interview, and then we will take it from there. Because if you don't have the understanding and my interview is being asked, I will not have time to train you one-on-one for the answers. So, but anyways, please ping me separately. I'll help you as best as I can. Any next question?
Okay, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Arthur. Do you have any plans for DevOps class in the near future?
Yeah, so DevOps is in my pipeline. I need to teach the Save DevOps class specifically. That's the plan. There's not many DevOps out there. There are some simple, easy DevOps classes, $150 exam. I don't think there are classes. Again, instructor-led classes not, but you can certify yourself. But yes, I do plan to do that. You'll need to give me some time. As you know, you've taken my class. I spend a lot of time and effort to teach, and I prepare a lot. Every time I teach, I prepare myself. So for me to make that DevOps more beneficial, I'm not prepared myself. Even though I've been in the industry, I want to make sure my couple of concepts are so simple in my mind that I can communicate that. Others may teach certifications every right, left, center without having that level of understanding, but I don't do that. So give me some time. But however, let me take that step back. That's me. If you want a DevOps certification, I know people that are teaching it, and I'm more than happy to guide you in that direction.
I will wait for when you start the teaching, but in the meantime, can you give me some link for the documents I can start reading?
No, so every certification class is no document, right? They expect you to pay them so you can get their material. That's the reality of the business, right?
Okay.
So once you register as a student, then you will get the student material. Then but I'll tell you on the SAFE, because you took the SAFE class, right? You go to SAFE's website, Scale Agile, and there's a whole section of DevOps, and just read whatever you want to read there. It's a lot of material there. Okay, next question. Question? Okay, so the question is ended. Let me take this opportunity to really get a good feedback. I will share the recording when I have the time. I have to save it, upload it, a couple of steps on my, bear with me. So go on mute. I'm hearing some noise from 484. I'm gonna mute you. Okay, so on your Chrome, I'm gonna put this link really quick and help me out here. So open up your Chrome browsers and do me a favor. When I post this link, just go to this link. Don't do anything fancy yet. Just literally just go to this link, and only 30 or 40 people can go at a time. So when you go to this link, which I'll share in the chat in a minute, you will see this little sticky note. Sticky note, you will see the sticky note. Don't get too fancy, please. Just, Agile, what is Agile Retro, right? So when you come to this browser and use Chrome, when you hit the sticky note, you will have the option to pick a color and put a sticky note. And what I need is just your feedback, right? Take one sticky for every feedback, whether you have something positive to share about the session, whether you have some ways that I can improve, negative things that you want to share about the session. Just do that for me, please. So at least I can take that as a feedback and help and get an idea of how this was helpful or not. So I am sharing that link on the chat. Copy that link or click it in your Chrome. Once you put your stickies, particularly on this board, please leave the Jamboard session so others can have the opportunity to dial in. Out of the 100 people that we have on the call, we have to probably do it in batches. So that's why they say small batches are always good and large batch is always a problem. But if you can, is anybody in there? Can you see that link?
It is asking for request status, Imtiaz.
Request status?
Asking for the request access.
Oh, hold on. Maybe I didn't make it public. Give me 1 second. Redirect only person added can be copy. Oh,
For me, I think it's asking for access because I'm using a different email account for my Google Drive.
Yeah, no, it shouldn't do. Generally, this is a free board and it should just give you.
I'm having the same.
Okay, so maybe my apologies. Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to get some feedback. So, how do I capture this? I would love to get feedback. Just bear with me for 2 more minutes. If not, we will take another option and we can wrap up. Anything else? So, okay, I don't think it's working. Oh, so this was my other feedback. So virtual. Okay. In the meantime, is there a question while I'm seeing some chat? I don't want to ignore it, but how about you do this?
Yes, you mentioned you have several trainings you offer, right? Hello?
Several what?
No, you mentioned you have like 13, 14 different trainings you offer. You have a list of what different trainings you offer that you can send us?
No, I mean everything under the Agile umbrella except for the Scrum Alliance, and there are some certification I can't offer, but we can again ping me separately. I mean everything around SAFe, a lot of training, all about Lean Agile Institute, anything around their framework, Agile coaching, Enterprise Agile coaching, and if I don't teach it because of my time, I will direct you to the right resource. Kanban,
Okay, thank you.
there's a Kanban training that's happening. I'm not teaching it, but friend of my somebody I know, she's doing it. So you're more than welcome to join other sessions, right? And then I happen to be in the industry, so I have an idea about who's good and who's not that great, if I may. So we'll figure out. Okay, so forget the retro. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it. Do me a quick favor if you can. On the chat window, if you can take a few minutes to just kind of give me a quick feedback on your chat, I would appreciate that. And I will capture that later. Okay, so just share with everybody anything that you want to share on the session, positive, just as a retro. And then we'll do a quick closing 2-minute remark. Any questions that I can answer for the next 2 minutes while people are posing stuff on chat?
Yeah, Brother Imtiaz, this is Abdul Sheikh here.
Yes.
We have a YouTube channel. Could you please share the name of that so we can subscribe?
Once I uploaded the video, which will take me a few days, I will share it in the webinar group, and you will point it right to you.
Thank you, brother.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Brother, this is Paige Bakrin. I'm actually an information analyst by profession, but I took some time off to stay home with my kid. And I've learned a lot of methodologies along the way because I worked for Xerox for like 18 years. So, but I've noticed things are different because back then the last methodology I used was black belt. What is the best way you feel, or which, apart from learning about Agile, if I want to do certification or whatever, how do you think I should best approach getting back into?
Yeah, so this is what I tell everybody, right? I say, first of all, evaluate your streams, right? If you feel you're financially restricted in aspects, don't spend any money on the certification classes, right? Because why spend anything that you can probably learn maybe potentially for zero or maybe very close to that, right? A couple $100, $100, I can do this. If you want a certification, again, I would recommend different things, depending on your do you want to just get certification so you have one, you have an understanding? I would again recommend something in the lower spectrum for you. I would not recommend something in the higher spectrum for you. I would not tell you to go do an enterprise level certification because you will never probably leverage that knowledge that you spend or money that you spend. So I would recommend you to be on the left side of the spectrum.
Okay.
And
thank you.
Anybody who's brand new and wants to do a simple Scrum Master certification or owner certification, as I said, there's an opportunity to do something under the $500 mark. Okay. And if not, then just use anything that comes to you for free, right? LinkedIn, the Udemy, my webinars, other people's webinars, Okay. All right. Okay, so continue your chat and let's wrap up. Thank you very, very much. I hope it was helpful. I hope you were looking forward to this session as much as I was. Again, as I said, recording was done. I'll post it. This is my first time recording on Zoom, so I'll make sure it saves it on my computer, and I have the other options to upload and share with you. Stay with the group. There's not just this. Is a bunch of webinars we will plan. I might be doing a training session if there's something of interest. Again, very nominal cost to do a full 2-day, very in-depth training of hands-on activity, right? But that's just training. I cannot certify you there. And then if you want certification, there's a whole different thing. Okay, so everybody might be in different situations. So thank you very much. Good to see everybody. Take care and stay in touch. Okay, Lee? And good
Thank
luck.
you, brother. Jazakallah.
Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, brother. Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome.
Thank you, Imtiaz Bhai. It was a very good session. Thanks for all your services.
Voice sounds familiar. How are you?
Yeah, this is Tahir. I was just listening in the background. It was a good, I put in some feedback in the chat window. It was a good session. I really enjoyed it.